Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Spears. This is a Ukraine war a news update, first part thereof for the 5th of April 2025. I'm away for the week, and so my output will be somewhat um, possibly lacking, as in I'm not going to be producing as much content, that's for sure. I am up other end of the country, well, halfway up the country with my two sisters, their families, and my mum and dad. I've explained why we are doing that, but it means that I will have to find a quiet place once in a while to do so. I'm also really ill, and I've gone like Ukraine norovirus. We have brought up me and my boys have brought up norovirus to the house, and I am unable to walk at the moment. And it's rather like Ukraine. When I was in Ukraine and got an illness, it really affects my multiple sclerosis, and it's exactly the same. So I'm being weighted on hand and foot, which is very nice. I did uh, fall over in the service station like a sack of spuds. That hurt quite a lot. I was helped back to the car by some kindly gentleman, so that was all good. Anyway, that's all irrelevant. Let's start with the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, and you can find them in the description to the video below. They are linked there. 1,390 personnel lost is a pretty high number, above that 1,300 arbitrary threshold that I use. 13 tanks is above the daily average. 20 troop carrying AFVs is around daily average, a snip under. 67 artillery systems, yet again, a huge number there, 3 times the daily average, and really significant attrition in that category, particularly. We've seen that over the last couple of weeks. Incredible numbers there. 1 multiple launch rocket system, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. That's going to be useful for the Ukrainians. 113 vehicles and fuel tanks. That's shot back up from a relatively low number yesterday. I think it was in the 60s, which is still pretty significant, right? And 1 piece of special equipment as well. Actually, I haven't checked whether there's an Andrew Perpetua loss list, as there was yesterday, which is good news that he's still doing them, but I don't know that it's going to be as regular as we have seen it. No, so that was the 4th. Yeah, I think that's what we looked at yesterday, that one, wasn't it? So if we look at the list there, yes, that was yesterday's list. So no new loss list from Andrew Perpetua, but yeah, 1 piece of special equipment just to round that off. Fairly good stats for the Ukrainians, all things considered. Now here we have a thread from Chris Owicki. Just going to run through it. It's not too long. Gives us, again, yes, it's an anecdote, but it gives us a sense of what's going on the front lines, that things are tough for the Russians in a lot of places, but we shouldn't be believing that these are massively representative of everything happening on the front line. Like, this is, Russians do have an issue, right? They have poor training, meat assaults, morale problems, so on and so forth. All the things that we've been talking about over the last couple of years. But they will have units that are operating well. They do take ground from the Ukrainians, and they do have more troops than the Ukrainians, obviously, and that is, that translates into this grinding offensive that still manages to take land on a consistent daily and weekly basis. So, unarmed, injured Russian soldiers are being used as meat probes to, quote, trample mines with their feet, according to a man who's recorded a video appealing for help. His commander tells the wounded, quote, "You are not needed. Cripples go and die." My goodness. That'll be me. 52-year-old Private Alexander Alexievich Konev, serving with the 3rd Battalion, 1008th Motorized, says that despite having a medical exemption from service due to sickness or injury, his commander intends to send him to an assault. Konev is currently at a training ground awaiting consultation with a neurologist and a military medical commission. Although he does not say what is wrong with him, the neurology appointment suggests a head or traumatic brain injury. Despite this, he says his unit's deputy commander, call sign Azur, arrived at the training ground and refused to take his medical certificates into account. Quote, "When asked directly that there were 2 previous assaults and a medal earned and no respect, he said, 'I don't care. We don't need you sick. We need healthy people.' When asked directly that there were two previous assaults and a medal earned. Oh yeah, that's a repetition of that. Azure told Konev, "You can go without an assault rifle if you can't carry it without a bulletproof vest. You are not needed. Cripples go and die just like meat, like a probe. Walk ahead of everyone and search for mines with your feet, so to speak. You will go ahead of the sappers. Well, roughly speaking, to trample mines to pave the way. You will die," he said. "You will die." Wow. "Since you have no health, you are not needed." Konrad's wife, Natalia, has confirmed the authenticity of the appeal and asked for help in distributing the video. She says that she has already sent complaints to the military authorities, but has not yet received a response. There's already plenty of evidence from across the front lines in Ukraine of Russian soldiers on crutches or even in wheelchairs being sent into assault. So it appears that this practice is quite likely to be widespread. And that's really the question. How endemic are these kind of anecdotes? I'd say they are. This is stuff like this is just a huge problem with the Russian army, but it's okay for them because they don't value human life, and they are happy to just cycle through humans as long as they are able to do so, right? So as long as there are people to replace those that are lost, then this is fine for them. As you can see from this screen grab, you've got a wheelchair there with someone that's appears to have fallen out of it. But you can go and watch the video in question, following the Telegram source there. In as ever, all of these tabs that I go through, the links are in the description below. Okay, what else do we have? The AFU have destroyed the commander of the drone detachment of the Special Unit Akhmat with the call sign Amur, according to Alexei Alaudanov. So that is, well, first of all, it's almost certainly happened because that's actually coming from the Russian commander of Akhmat. And good news there for the Ukrainians in taking out quite a key member of the of Akhmat. Now, Chris Owicki, another thread here. Russia's push to capture Pokrovsk is still being seriously hampered by Ukrainian drones, which are causing major problems for Russian logistics and supplies. Vehicles are unable to reach within 10 kilometers of front line because of the constant threat of drone attacks. A Russian soldier on the ground writes at the Philologist in Ambush Telegram channel about the situation on the front line south of Pokrovsk. Quote, "Everything hasn't changed much. We're still butting heads in the same places. Nova Vasilivka is still behind us, and the head-on battles in Uspenivka. Sometimes the expletives, the Ukrainians will take it. Sometimes we'll recapture it. In principle, it's more behind us, but it's more of a grey area. We haven't been able to get past Shevchenko yet. There are also head-on battles, but it seems there's already been a turning point in our favor at Shevchenko." Actually, this is a Russian soldier. So that's a shame because actually some of these, but if it's true, right, some of these places are places where the Russians have been losing ground. So Shevchenko, Uspenivka, but you can see that Deep State Maps there has red arrows in many of the directions where the Ukrainians have been taking land back. Quote, "Judging by the situation, it doesn't look like they've transferred any significant numbers of drones to Kursk. Because the birds are a complete mess. The sky is behind the Ukrainians. Rotations are being carried out in exactly the same way, 10 kilometers on foot at best." This is another piece of the jigsaw to suggest that the Ukrainians do have a drone advantage there, and that's causing a real problem for the Russians, who are having to do rotations by foot. A car drives up to where it can, then you walk on foot. The main problem is supplies of ammunition, gasoline, water. All of this is a very big problem. If in the villages the guys can still use some old wells, then in the forest camps without water, it's total crap. That's it. How much water you bring on yourself is how much water you'll have. So everything is the same without any special changes on our side. So it gives you a little indication of what's going on perhaps in the Pokrovsk region. Okay, so Ukraine has hit a valuable Tirada 2 system, but they don't say where or when this happened. This is an electronic warfare complex, which has reportedly been particularly useful in stopping Starlink from working. This one, though, may be reparable, so just some drone image of that getting hit. But good to see them take out the electronic warfare bits of kit are always useful. Right, moving on, we have a Bukanka stuff. Right, this is I can't show you this video because it's a little bit inappropriate. Well, I get into trouble for it. But here we have a Bukanka that drives up, right? And Scooby-Doo van, and a whole bunch of Russians get out. It's interesting that you've got like a drone waiting overhead just for these guys to do what they are going to do. And I guess it speaks to the threat of drones being ever present. You know, they are so numerous in the skies that you just think any assault or any kind of movement of anything that's within, like we talked about before, that corridor that may even be bigger now, was a sort of 10-kilometer corridor, 20-kilometer corridor now, maybe even up to sort of 30 to 40 kilometers, with the extended range of a lot of FPV drones and Baba Yagas and drones that drop munitions. Now, a whole bunch of people get out of this Bukanka, and then they just get hit with a couple of IEDs dropped from this drone. And it's like straight away, right, get from A to B, get out of B, bang, bang. Half of them are then taken out by these IEDs. Just like, well, just it's almost too easy in many of these cases. Incredible. Drones have really revolutionized warfare, haven't they? And then talking about Bukankas, I thought I'd add this one in. So some people are quite fans of Bukankas. They are, yeah, okay. They look funny. They're Scooby Doo vans. They are frowned upon, as in, this is a modern war. This is 2025, and the Russians are using so many of these Bukankas on the front lines. But they are four-wheel drive. They are quite robust in some. I mean, they're not great. They can not exactly particularly armored, but they can also be turned over quite easily when they flip. So just a few of these soldiers. Look at that, bosh. So there you go. Scooby-Doo vans playing their part in this war. Many probably decades after they've become not quite obsolete, but they're not exactly the cutting edge of military technology. Right, in occupied Melitopol, a Kadyrovite armored vehicle was destroyed yesterday, according to Ukraine's intelligence. At least 5 members of the Akhmat Vostok TikTok battalion were eliminated. Wow. So that, I assume, therefore, is sort of sabotage, some kind of activity. I don't know whether it's partisans, but to take out a vehicle and 5 people in it, then that is some pretty useful partisan activity if it is. Then Russia on fire, major blaze in Nizhny Novgorod. Thought to be a grass fire, could be getting out of control. You are going to start seeing this more commonly, I think, as the seasons move on. You're going to start getting wildfires, and of course, like I've said to you on previous years, in peacetime, the Russian conscripted. The Russian conscripts would be used to do emergency services work, particularly with wildfires. That's one of the uses of those conscripts. Well, actually, since the war has been raging, these conscripts have been pulled to do work elsewhere, and that means that wildfires like this can very easily get out of control. And Russia has been unable to deal with them on many occasions throughout the last 3 years. Okay, moving on to distant strikes. 92 Shahids. So again, less than we've seen. Still fairly, I mean, goodness me, if we were to go to 2 years ago, 92 would have been a very impressive number. 82 of them taken out. So 10 out of 92, again, around just over 10% failure to intercept rate. So the interception rate, I don't know, probably something like 88%, which is okay, but it's not as good as it was. As we say every day, 95 to 100% interception rate when it was looking good a few weeks ago. Now, that doesn't seem to be the case. The Russians are using, I think, improved tactics, and they may well be successful in resistance to electronic warfare. Those chips from the Chinese that are claimed to be used on these Shahids. But I do note that the numbers, although 92 is a fairly significant number, it's not what it was, half of what it was, really. I do think that the Russians may have had one of their drone production facilities or depots taken out. And we'll come on to sort of targeted strikes after we go through the big news of Kryvyi being absolutely hammered yesterday. So, scene of a Russian ballistic missile strike on the city of Kryvyi, in which 6 kids and 11 adults were just massacred. Actually, it's more than that now. This was earlier, where you can see that a I mean, this is a children's playground. This is a residential area, and that's where an Iskander-M ballistic missile hit. Just absolutely horrific. And this has caused quite a lot of disgust. To be honest, Zelensky didn't hold back in what he was saying last night. So horrific news in Kryvyi, where here 16 people actually end up being 18, maybe even 19 now, but have been killed by a Russian ballistic missile. The attack came in the evening rush hour. A restaurant and about 20 houses were hit, and educational institutions were destroyed. No doubt the Russians are going to claim that this was a restaurant utilized by Ukrainian forces, and I don't know, maybe it could be such a place. So now there are power cuts after drone attacks in Kryvyi, and that's subsequent to the strike with the ballistic missile. So really horrific scenes coming out there. Number of people injured in the missile attack on Kryvyi has now increased to 61 people, including 12 children. 40 of the victims are in hospital. The rest are under outpatient care. 16 died. Well, actually, as I said, that's 18 now. More death and misery was inflicted by the terrorist state in Kryvyi tonight in a drone attack. It's now known a woman was killed and 5 more injured in the drone strikes that caused multiple fires across the Dnipropetrovsk region. And here, some horrific footage coming out of Kryvyi. The death toll has risen to 18, including 9 children, with 61 other people injured, including 12 children, according to Ukraine State Emergency Services. Just absolutely horrific to think that that many children died in one. Oh, it's just horrible. Despite the fact that an apartment building and a children's playground were at the center of the strike, Russia cynically claimed a high-precision strike had targeted a meeting of unit commanders and Western instructors in a restaurant. Ukraine's general staff has identified the weapon used in yesterday's evening's deadly attack. It said, quote, Russian forces struck Kryvyi with an Iskander-M ballistic missile and a cluster warhead, which is designed to hit a large area and a large number of people. I mean, to use a cluster munition in a residential area is disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Yeah, just horrible news coming out of there. Now, Zelensky called for increased pressure on Russia following that the attack on. Actually, that's a bit later. We'll come to that in a wee while. That's in Kherson, right? Yeah. We just want to finish off Kryvyi. So these are the claims. This, I presume, is coming from TASS, the state media entity. The Russian armed forces struck a meeting place with commanders and instructors in one of the restaurants in Kryvyi. The Ministry of Defense reported when the Russian armed forces struck the meeting site of the Ukrainian armed forces, the enemy lost up to 85 soldiers and officers of foreign countries. The Defense Ministry stated. I don't know that you could even remotely think that is the case when you've got actual footage of civilians dying and the strike in clearly a residential area. The Russians just take the absolute mickey, don't they? So Zelensky has said about this, these are not humans, they're just scum. There are no proper words for these Russian bastards. These attacks are no accident. Russia knows exactly what they're targeting. They promised the US to protect such sites, yet their words always end with missiles. Absolutely on point there. And then I think, was there not one more quote from... No, I thought there was another quote from Zelensky. No, I don't have it. But really sad images coming out from there. Here's a video of a family still sitting by the body of their 15-year-old son. Now, this family just sat there with their son. Look, this is a daytime, hour after hour after hour. Parents by the body of the 15-year-old son. It's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking to lose a 15-year-old son. And you can see what they're saying there. You're my sunshine. I guess over and over, hour after hour. Just awful. Zelensky's call for increased pressure on Russia following drone attack on Kherson power plant. Such attacks cannot be by accident, Zelensky said on April the 4th, pointing out that Russia is fully aware of the target's critical energy role. And in fact, they have now submitted a whole bunch of evidence to the Americans that the Russians have broken the ceasefire agreement on critical energy infrastructure. And actually, Marco Rubio has made a comment on that. Anton Gerashenko says Russian media report drone attacks last night. Quote, first point, drones attacked fiber optic. So this is the Ukrainians doing their stuff last night. They attacked a fiber optic systems plant located in Saransk. We'll come to that in a second. It's noteworthy this is the Republic of Moldova, at least 7,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. I've read 3,000 kilometers elsewhere. 7,000 seems like an awful lot. Locals counted at least a dozen drones and posted footage of precision hits. Now, the Russians claim that at this Saransk um, plant that, well, we'll come on to their claims in a second, but you can see that there was certainly some explosions there. Fiber optic systems plant produces fiber optic cables, which are used to control combat drones. The local authorities reported an attack on an industrial facility in Chapaevsk. Preliminarily, the drones targeted the Promsyntes plant, which produces explosives for the Russian army. And we can see some fire burning there in the background. So possibly some useful targets hit last night. Voronezh as well, another region that was given some Ukrainian attention. But actually, and also occupied Donetsk, near the Donetsk arena. Some explosions there, some attention from the Ukrainians as well. Don't know what was hit, but yeah, that's a pretty big explosion there, although that could have been actually a drone hit in the air, to be fair. So going back to the Saransk fiber optics manufacturing plant, the capital of Moldova, the attack cripples Russia's ability to produce jamming-resistant drones for military use. And there's quite a few differing pieces of video footage of these strikes. Now, we also understand that, so it could disrupt military comms and control as well, is the claim there. But there was still attacks going on during the daytime this morning. And here we actually see really clear footage of a Ukrainian drone, unfortunately, and this is at the same place. Unfortunately, it doesn't explode when it hits. I think it's just a Ninja drone, one of these kind of small aircraft drones. But as it hits possibly the intended target, unfortunately, it doesn't explode. It's a real shame there. I wonder what the percentage of drones that hit that don't explode are, for the Ukrainians or for both sides. So that's one Sky Ranger Ninja type drone attacking the fiber optic plant in Saransk again this morning. Okay, moving on to other bits and pieces. Much of this will be on peace negotiations, but we'll start with oil price crisis that could finish Russia. So this is the analyst saying, I've often said that what it would take to finish the Russian economy and tip it off its high-speed rails is something unexpected. It's running so hot and so fast that with no tolerances for or margins forever, that one unexpected too sharp a turn in an unexpected direction and the whole thing could derail. Oil is its biggest risk. A price reduction, it fell from an already low of $65 per barrel to $62 per barrel yesterday alone. Increased supply from Saudi Arabia, reduced demand as recession bites, and forces prices well below $60. This is Russia's death knell. Russia produces oil at various rates, and that range from as low as $10 per barrel to as high as $42 per barrel for the newer, harsher fields in the far north. High costs are closer to the norm these days. Add to the cost of shipping and insurance, and a grey fleet costs money to operate, and the average real cost is said to be around $55 to $58 per barrel. You can see how close to not even breaking even Russian crude oil actually is. The state budget for 2025 is based on crude oil being $70 a barrel for the whole year, and it's already been trading below that for most of it. Ergo, Russia is operating on a budget already based on flawed estimates. It already doesn't have the income it expected, and the situation is worsening. Trump may have tanked the world economy to a point, but he's inadvertently put a curve into the rails of the Russian train, and it's going too fast to handle. If it keeps going, it's going to crash. This is one of the kind of silver linings to the very dark cloud of Trump crashing global economies. He has also caused the the price per barrel for oil to plummet. Obviously, there's going to be Saudi Arabia and OPEC production having something to say about that as well. But it's also this is not going to be good news for Russia, especially as they budgeted for certain prices, and that's factored in. Obviously, that's part of their national budget, and if it's a long way off what they budgeted for, so $70 a barrel, and they're shifting an awful lot of barrels, then that's going to make a huge impact on their budget if they're only getting sort of 60 odd dollars per barrel. Right, I reported this when it happened that uh, Budanov, who is the intelligence guru in Ukraine, his wife was poisoned back in 2023, and it turns out that in 2024, in December 2024, so relatively recently, her 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 care her situation worsened. So obviously there is some long term health problem for Mariana Budanova. US military doctors secretly saved the poisoned wife of Ukraine's spy master. Poisoned in 2023, she was flown to the US in December 2024 for urgent care after her condition worsened. And that would be at least a year after the initial poisoning. So, not looking good for her, is it? But the US helped out. 3 years into Russia's full scale invasion, the Ukrainian military faces an endemic manpower shortage and is forced to scramble for people to fill the gaps in the infantry depleted by the war. I was talking about there being so many differing claims about this. General Kryvyi, from in charge of NATO forces in Europe, said in that hearing in Congress just yesterday or the day before that actually they've done an awful lot to overcome some of the challenges they have in terms of personnel shortages. And yet, a day later, you've got claims that, the issues are endemic. I would err on the side of they do have serious manpower shortages. Yes, they are recruiting convicts. Yes, they are, playing around with people within the age brackets that they can't mobilize. These 18 to 25, they've been playing around with volunteers from that age range and making sure they still have access to education, vocational training, etc., etc. They're just doing everything they can to get people into the army without doing a full national mobilization. But options are limited, and it's such a horrible dilemma they're in. Right, the chiefs of defence staff of the French and British armed forces travelled to Kiev on Friday, April the 4th, 2025, to meet with the highest Ukrainian authorities. So there's lots of talk about this coalition of the willing set of forces, and things are being put in place. At the same time, Zelensky says that the US will not lift sanctions on Russia. Good news if that's true. And the EU countries will definitely not lift sanctions. So America won't lift them. The EU definitely won't lift them. Zelensky said that proposals for a new US-Ukraine mineral resources agreement will be ready next week. He's also briefly responded to Russia's terror attack on Kryvyi, saying, quote, "For negotiations, Russians simply need to stop being murderers. Right now, they're just demons." Zelensky expected tighter US sanctions. It's so true. You must imagine being Zelensky, this leader that's trying so desperately to get peace negotiations off the ground, get it all sorted for the betterment of Ukraine, obviously, and then having Russia just sending this kind of M into residential areas and kill all those children, and the rest of the world barely bats an eyelid. Will that be reported on mainstream media much, or will they be talking about how wonderful Steve Witkoff is and blah blah blah? Just really frustrating for Dmitriev. So Dmitriev is a guy that's in charge of, for Russia, in charge of economic cooperation. He was sent out to meet with Steve Witkoff and probably take advantage of Witkoff. He is the one that wants to open up trade with the US. For Dmitriev said, this is a quote from Zelensky, who was in the US, and we know that he was not only in the US. The main question is how to withdraw $300 billion in frozen Russian assets. They're also running to the US with a minerals agreement. So here is a bit of a gripe from Zelensky concerning the minerals agreement that Russia is attempting to do with the US. There are just so many mixed messages coming out from the US, aren't there? Anyway, US is considering measures against Russia to achieve a ceasefire, says Zelensky as well. I believe the US will soon intensify sanctions on Russia because they refuse to end the war. Goodness me, I hope that happens. Now, Macron, Daily Telegraph has got an article interesting on, and I've talked about this before, like your big European players, the people that are in a good position to stand up and be counted, to maybe um, place their name in the history books, are Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer. I don't see anyone else, maybe Friedrich Merz when he comes along in Germany. But Macron, according to the Telegraph, has a chance to become a key European leader in negotiations with Putin. A number of countries from the coalition of the willing are in favor of Macron leading the process of interaction with Russia in support of Kyiv. And indeed, Macron to helm EU's talks with Putin. The Telegraph report says Kyiv Independent. French President Emmanuel Macron is readying to become Europe's point person in negotiations with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And that doesn't surprise me at all. And I think that's fairly decent as well. It's clear what he thinks. He's got a good moral backbone, Emmanuel Macron, and he doesn't suffer fools gladly in terms of Russia. He knows what Russia are all about, right? And he absolutely needs to be at the center of things. I would say Keir Starmer as well. I'd say Europe needs to be hugely represented in peace negotiations, and it's really frustrating that that hasn't been forthcoming yet. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hopefully, that was of use. I am going to go and maybe drink more tea and try and get over some lovely norovirus. One of my boys, he was projectile vomiting last night. We're in this Airbnb, lovely big house for like 14 of us, 13 of us, and just on the carpet. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Bah. And then I couldn't move, so he came down into my room. Like, I've been sick. I've been sick. I was like, I can't move. Phoning my sister at 3 in the morning, who's upstairs, completely asleep. Like, mate, just go and knock on someone's room. I literally can't move. I felt so useless. Anyway, all's well that ends well. I'm sure it'll all be okay. But nothing like a bit of norovirus to go around. In the meantime, guys, you don't need to know that. Take care. Speak soon.